All right. Welcome to the sideboard. My name's Eric, and today I've got another deck tech for you. This is Mardu Gearhulks, and if you like today's deck, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and if you like the content in general, subscribe to the channel. So, today's deck does have what I want to call a grandfather because it's at least more than one set old. Dev from SBMTG originally built the first version of this deck I had ever seen, and I don't know where the original concept came from, but that's where I seen the original concept, and I've just kind of updated that deck to today's standard, and there will be a link to the gameplay. We just live streamed it. We did go 2-0. We took red deck to time, killed him at 1 second left on the clock. So we did do really well there. That was a lot of fun. There will be a link down there, so if you guys want to go look at that gameplay, you'll be able to do that. So let's take a look at the deck that I've had so much fun with. And the deck starts off with 24 lands, and I know that when you're trying to hit a lot of 6 drops like Combustible Gearhulk and Noxious Gearhulk, and even the 5 drops Cataclysmic Gearhulk, and it has some 7 drops God-Pharaoh's Gift. I guess we should just start up here at the top. This is a God-Pharaoh's Gift deck, and the deck itself is not truly based around God-Pharaoh's Gift. However, when God-Pharaoh's Gift happens, you just get to do really nice things. But the deck actually doesn't have enough creatures to truly benefit from God-Pharaoh's Gift. Most of the time, if there was anything that you're wanting to bring back, you're just wanting to bring a combustible back itself. So Refurbish has a lot more hits in this deck than it does in, say, the blue-white God-Pharaoh's Gift deck. However, God-Pharaoh's Gift is actually a little bit weaker of a card because, again, we only have 13 creatures. So let's take a look at how we get those creatures in the graveyard and how we get the God-Pharaoh's Gift in the graveyard, and then we'll talk about how we stay alive while all of that happens. So around the beginning of the game, you need to be making sure that you have good ways to discard cards, and we have that with Cathartic Reunion. And Cathartic Reunion allows us to discard 2 cards and then cast this. It's an additional cost, so if they do counter the Cathartic Reunion, you have discarded 2 cards, and they have then 3-for-1'd you with their turn 2 censor if they play it. However, you'll see in the gameplay that that doesn't always happen. So with this, we can discard a couple 6 mana spells, 5 mana spells that we can easily get back later, and we can do the same with our Tormenting Voice. One of the things you might want to remember when playing this deck is try to hang on to cards and don't play your hand completely empty, because top decking a Tormenting Voice or a Cathartic Reunion is not really the place you want to be if you have no other cards in hand. Yes, it's a great draw spell, and if you do have a couple dead cards that you can get rid of, Cathartic Reunion is great. I also really like this with the amount of control that is being played in the format. You can easily just pitch the cards that are just no good in the matchup and continue playing with the cards that are. And in control, a lot of times you're going to want to play through your actual threats anyway. So Cathartic Reunion, really, really good. Tormenting Voice, there's actually 4 Tormenting Voice and 3 Cathartic Reunion in the deck, because just for that reason I just explained, where if you top deck this, you're more likely to have just a single card in hand, and needing to get rid of a Cathartic Reunion could take 2 or 3 turns before you might have a card you just can't get rid of, and Cathartic Reunion just sits dead. So we did go with a few more Tormenting Voices, but Cathartic Reunion is really important because it fills the graveyard quick and early. The same can be said for Key to the City. Key to the City is also an extremely powerful draw engine, as the deck doesn't have a lot going on turn 2 and 3, and if you don't actually hit your Refurbish, you also have not much going on 4. So being able to discard cards and spend that mana as, kind of cycling, if you will. Think of it as you have to cycle, pay 2 mana to cycle at the beginning of your upkeep. And that's just kind of the way Key works, but you can draw a lot of cards off Key, and it can draw you out of some really dead spots. Also, the actual ability to make your Gearhulks and things unblockable, it can come in clutch, and you'll know what I mean if you go back and watch the end of game 1 there. Now, Cultivator's Caravan, now this card is extremely versatile in the deck. Now, one of the biggest things I like about the deck, or the card, or the best pro to the card, is the fact that it will allow me to cast my 5 mana spells on turn 4. Most of the time, a Liliana on turn 4, or a Cataclysmic Gearhulk, or even an Angel of Invention on turn 4 is a really, really good card, because you're actually really ahead of the curve there. That's a good spot to be playing that card, and this allows you to do that. And now, even if you don't hit that 4th land, it can allow you to start casting your Refurbish and things like that on 4. Now, the second, and probably one just as important as the first, this gives you pseudo haste. So you're refurbishing back, or your God-Pharaoh's Gift back, a Combustible Gearhulk, Noxious Gearhulk, Cataclysmic, whatever the case may be. Every creature in this deck can crew the Cultivator's Caravan. So you can instantly just crew up that Cultivator's Caravan and get in for damage, really pressuring your opponent. This is a 5/5, so that's a lot of pressure you're putting on your opponent there. Also, it can allow you to have a blocker that might be sacrificable, but most of the time you want to sacrifice your Gearhulks. And it's hard to say this would be a better blocker than Combustible Gearhulk, who's a 6/6 with first strike. By the way, that can block Hazard without problem. Anyway, we have a couple really good 4-drops that you're probably really used to in the meta right now with the blue-white God-Pharaoh's Gift rolling around. But we do the exact same thing. Turn 4 Refurbish for us has a lot more threats, and slamming a Refurbish onto a Combustible Gearhulk on turn 4, when that resolves, you can do a lot of damage. Also, it must be noted that with Combustible Gearhulk, God-Pharaoh's Gift, 2 God-Pharaoh's Gift, and any 2 Noxious Gearhulks equal death. They're instantly dead, and we do a lot of our damage based off the Combustible Gearhulk. It's really hard for the opponent to allow us to have those cards, and when we can just start drawing 3 cards at a time, and you'll be really surprised at how often you can cycle through a single Combustible Gearhulk with the deck. A Braid is actually your friend. Your opponent having a Braid, putting those cards back to where you can get them again, is really, really good. And I'm going to say that if you were going to make a single cut in the deck, it would be a singleton copy of God-Pharaoh's Gift. The main reason that I am on 3 God-Pharaoh's Gift is because of some of the creatures I have in the sideboard. I really want to be able to get my Angels of Sanctions out of the graveyard with a God-Pharaoh's Gift as quickly as possible. Now, originally we didn't have the Angel of Invention, but Angel of Invention works so well even when you just cast it on turn 4. That's right, turn 4. When you just cast it on turn 4 and go wide, that is really, really good and can give you a lot of time to stabilize. And that's exactly what you need, because if you can get time to stabilize with a Liliana, then you start getting back those chains that I was speaking of. Now, that's not our only 5-drop that is absolutely devastating. Cataclysmic Gearhulk might be one of the most unsung heroes in the deck, but when it's good, it is extremely good. Now, we do have a couple cards in the sideboard that we can directly take this card out for, which we normally do that when we're bringing in the heavy enchantments. Now, you'll notice that there's not a lot of enchantments, not a lot of permanents of the same type. Now, granted, these are all artifacts, but this will be able to count as a creature, and then you can count this as your artifact. So most of the time you'll just want to be able to kill one of your own Gearhulks, and that's actually what the deck wants to do. So when your opponent brings in 2 or 3 copies of a Braid thinking that they're just going to keep you down, what they're actually going to do is give you more enter the battlefield triggers. Yes, they are going to slow your deck down a little bit because you don't have anything with haste. Oh wait. But they will give you more enter the battlefield triggers, which could just end up killing them if, you know, they make the bad decision here. Now, in the words of Dev, it does give your opponent a lot of agency. However, they're not in control of what the top 3 cards of your library are, and those can be devastating. Now, Noxious Gearhulk, this card is amazing. I really like the card because it can restore your health when you need it, and it is an amazing attacker. Most of the games you will actually finish with your Noxious Gearhulks, and Combustible Gearhulk will be your defense. Cataclysmic Gearhulk being your board wipe. You actually have a lot more interaction with your opponent than it appears beneath, like just at the surface it looks like you have almost no interaction, and you don't really have a lot of interaction with the opponent, but you have a lot of interaction with the board. You can do a lot of things to the board. You can add a lot of power to the board very quickly. The deck is extremely powerful, and we displayed that tonight in the live stream. So let's take a look at the sideboard here. Franklin, thanks for subscribing. Fragmentize, great card, good at popping Search for Azcanta, Cast Outs, Gideon's Intervention, and even Ixalan's Binding. All of the major enchantments and artifacts, most of which fall in the 4 mana or less category, except for really God-Pharaoh's Gift. There's not a lot of artifacts or enchantments that are really jumping out above that. We're seeing a little bit of play out of New Perspectives, but if New Perspectives became a serious thing, you would probably just have to make sure you held open a Cast Out. We do have answers for that, and if you really wanted to answer it, you could just play Gideon's Intervention before they could ever New Perspectives, and then at that point, there's not going to be a lot they can do about it. So we've got some answers to almost any combo, and Gideon's Intervention is just absolutely terrific because it has so much versatility that you can bring it in against creatures that are already on the board. Like, I think we might have played it after they had played Hazoret, and of course we did because they had a Hazoret on the board. So we played it after Hazoret, and it pretty much just shut his Hazoret down. So a lot of really good interaction here. Gideon's Intervention, great card. I know Ixalan's Binding probably deserved a spot in the deck somewhere, but because we didn't have a good answer to Approach or a few other key things in the format like Whirler Virtuoso, putting a Gideon's Intervention down, calling Whirler Virtuoso, make sure that you never have to worry about the combos. And then we have a couple copies of Angel of Sanction. Then we have Aethersphere Harvester for a little bit of life gain, Crook of Condemnation for answering, and picking at the graveyard. Because we're also a graveyard deck, we really don't want to have answers that completely remove the entire graveyard. So Crook is exactly what we're looking for, as it allows us to just kind of, pick at the graveyard and take out what we want, like a scavenger. And it allows us to do that at instant speed, so as they target something. However, against a God-Pharaoh's Gift deck, you might want to actually go ahead and preemptively take a card out of their library, the most important, most devastating card out of their library, if you're not going to sack the entire graveyard. So you have to do that before they actually enter combat, because that's when they're going to get that trigger. Now, Hour of Devastation, terrific card against red deck and any other green deck that might have some indestructible creatures and things. So Hour of Devastation, really good card. And then Fiery Cannonade, also really good against red deck. And we do have one other card in the main board I didn't mention, and that's 2 copies of Settle the Wreckage, just because those are really good at dealing with red, and they come on time. Turn 4 is exactly when you want to be blocking, because most of the time, especially against red, they're trying to get that Hazoret out and have him swinging by 4, and it seems the worse their opening hand is, the more likely they are to get that off. It's amazing how Mulligan works for red deck. But let's take a look at the land base really quick. We've got those 4 Canyon Slough I talked about earlier for cycling, and that does come in handy. Sometimes when you're holding these are just 2 mana draw spells. And then we have 4 Concealed Courtyard, because we do need that early white We have to have it by turn 4. We have 3 copies of Dragon Skull Summit, 2 Field of Ruin, and 2 Hostile Deserts. Hostile Desert is really, really good in this deck because when we have an abundance of land, that's exactly what we're going to be pitching here with Cathartic Reunion. And it also needs to be said that you can color fix with Field of Ruin. 3 Inspiring Vantage. Again, we need red early, so Inspiring Vantage was definitely a good card to have in our land base. And then we have 3 mountains, 2 plains, and a swamp. That is the land base. Guys, I had a whole lot of fun playing the deck. I hope you guys have fun playing the deck. We'll catch you next time here on the sideboard.